There are two things that I equate to my success. One was NARPM. It taught me how to run my property management business operationally and successfully. And then the second one is I hired a business coach early on. So the business coach taught me the language of business, and NARPM taught me the actual operations.
Welcome to Unfiltered, the official podcast of propertymanagement.com. I'm your host, Dylan Scroggins, joined by co-founder, president of propertymanagement.com, Matt Speer, and a special guest today, Mr. Pete Neubig, CEO and co-founder of VPM Solutions, a friend of the pod, the business in real life. Pete, thanks for joining us, man.
Awesome, man. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to this.
Yeah, we're a little nervous, man, because I know you've hosted more podcast episodes than we could imagine. So a little pressure here.
Yeah, we've got a professional. I don't know. I'm now nervous. Thanks, Dylan.
Yeah, he's already taking notes on all the things we've already messed up. But man, happy to have you.
Well, thanks for having me, guys. I am excited about this podcast and talking to you guys.
Yeah, man. Well, we're excited about having you. I think we originally met at Broker Owner. I was on the trade show floor. I saw this guy giving out gold gloves. And I was like, man, I got a 3-year-old who needs to let out some aggression. I got to go talk to this guy and get some gloves. So that's where the friendship started.
You know, it's funny. I actually receive pictures every once in a while. Somebody with like a black eye or a bruise, they give the gloves to their kids and then the kids start hitting them. So yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Well, when there's a class action lawsuit, I promise I won't join. Well, cool. Well, I know a lot of our listeners have already heard your name, already know you. They might know you in a lot of different ways, right? With building and exiting a property management company yourself, but also as the host of the NARPM pod and what you're doing now as the CEO of VPM Solutions. So give us a rundown of just how you got into this wild world of property management.
Yeah, I'll give you 55 years of life in 5 minutes. How's that?
Please, make it 6.
Like everybody that's listening to the podcast, I grew up wanting to be a property manager, but nobody, right? I got in on the investment side of things, right? So I started buying real estate in the early 2000s because I didn't feel like I was smart enough to own a business, but I could buy real estate. I understood, and it was super tangible. So I'm like, oh, I'll buy real estate, and I kind of had it flipped. Right. Today, my theory is you own a business. The business is the ATM machine. The ATM machine then purchases the properties, which, that builds your wealth. That's wealth building. Right. Early on, I was buying so much property. The idea was I'm going to get so much cash flow that cash flow is then going to replace my job, not really understanding that the job is actually the reason why I can buy all the properties. It is the ATM machine. So I bought so many properties. I think I had 30 properties, 31 single family homes with a business partner. I also had a 52 unit apartment complex, a 100 unit apartment complex, and a 32 unit apartment complex. And I was still working, and I needed the job because we were losing freaking money on the investments because I was buying the wrong property because I was only focused on one thing, cash flow, which you tend to buy lower income properties. And I know it's not an investment podcast, but just laying down a foundation. Because we bought so many properties, we had to find a property management firm. This is now, I'm going back to 2005. Internet is in its infancy. Yes, I'm old. Internet's in its infancy. So we couldn't really find anybody. And we decided, you know what? We're just going to build a better mousetrap. So we built it. I'm sorry. In 2005, we started buying the houses. We started looking at property management about 2010. Still, the internet was not really what it was going to be. At the behest of our CPA, he's like, listen, you guys got to create a separate LLC, which I hated doing because I already had 3 LLCs for all the different properties. Actually, I had 6 LLCs, one for every apartment complex, then one for about 20 homes, another for another 11 homes. And just doing the books was maddening.
You don't even want to log into your bank account because it's stressful because you've got all these accounts.
Yeah, well, none of them have any money either, right? So you're all these accounts. So anyway, we decided, okay, you know what? We like finding the deals, we like buying the deals, but we were terrible at managing the deals. Residents calling us, they would call my business partner, Steve, then they would call me. Maintenance guys would say they're going and not show up. We had no systems, no processes, no org chart, no way to hire people. It was just tremendously terrible. And then it got worse before it got better because next thing I know, I'm managing 60 properties. I'm like, how am I managing 60 single family homes? And my business partner is like, oh, well, so-and-so needed help and so-and-so needed help. Now I'm third party managing. I wasn't even a realtor yet. I was just an investor. By the way, in the state of Texas, you have to be a licensed agent to manage properties as of I think it was January of 11. This is in the middle of 2011. I'm managing all these properties. So that's how we came to it. The short story long is I was still working. We had created Empire Property Management. It was taking up more of my time, weekends, nights, lunch hours, before work, after work. I mean, so eventually I finally decided, okay, I think we have a business here. And I exited corporate America. Still one of the hardest decisions I ever made was to leave corporate America. And I started Empire, when I left corporate America, December 1st of 2012, I was 41 years old. That's when I started my first business. So you young guys out there that are already running your business in your 20s and 30s, kudos to you guys. Amazing. I'm always really, really impressed with such young talent that I see at all these NARPM conferences. But that's how I got started. That's how I got started in property management. By the way, fun fact, I thought I created the single family property management industry. I have never heard of NARPM. Everybody I talked to only knew multifamily. So I went into this thing not knowing anything. And thank the Lord I found NARPM. If you listen to this and you do not know what NARPM is, most likely you're doing things wrong. For example, I wasn't even collecting rent. I was letting the rent go to the owners, and then I was billing the owners my $50 for property management fees. Like, crazy stuff.
Yeah,
I didn't have separate bank accounts. Crazy stuff.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, that is crazy. That's cool that you're sharing that, because I think there's people that are hearing this and are like, okay, I'm not doing this as poorly as I thought I was. Like, it's
So
NARPM's the scene to kind of clean that up too.
There are two things that I equate to my success. One was NARPM. It taught me how to run my property management business operationally and successfully. And then the second one is I hired a business coach early on because I was an IT guy for 25 years. My business partner was a pilot for 20 years. So we didn't know business. So the business coach taught me the language of business, and property management and NARPM taught me the actual operations. And then I basically, look, you have to learn and you have to act. And so one of our superpowers as a team, Steve and I, was that we would go to these conferences or we'd learn from the business coach and we would actually act on it. And so that allowed us, I feel that we were one of the more well-known property management, single family property management companies in 2017, 2018, 2019. And we were one of the most efficiently run. We were ahead of the curve on a lot of things like remote team members that we'll talk about, on automation before Lead Simple and Apply was even in anybody's brain. We built automation in HubSpot, if you can believe it. So we were forefront on a lot of things. And I believe we became one of the better property management firms in the country, which allowed us to then exit in 2019. And then I decided I was unhappy being an employee again because I did 25 years of that, 10 years owning my own business. Going back to an employee was really difficult. So if you do exit, I don't recommend taking a job with the company that you exit to. I recommend having your next step. Luckily, I found that in 2020. We built the basis, the chassis, if you will, of VPM, and we went live with the product in 21. And here we are today in 25. And we're doing really well. We have over 1,300 people working, helping people with jobs. We have over 400 businesses that are utilizing our services. And of course, we have a bunch of training, and we could get all into that later on. But I'm a big believer is the more people you help, the more you get in life, what you would like.
There's a lot to pull out of that. I got about 17 follow-up questions. So, you mentioned like a lot of the new talent and the new energy entering the property management space. I feel that. This is the first time I went to broker owner. I've been serving this space directly, I guess 10 years ago, but technically really focused the last 2 years on recruiting. And I'm starting to see a lot more people open their eyes to a career in property management. Matt, how old were you when you started Live Indy?
Man, I was 23 or 4.
So you're way ahead of the curve. But Pete, tell us about, and then even NARPM, new president here, like a lot of exciting things. Matt, we got to get the new NARPM president on the pod. So that's one of my goals for Q4 I'm going to share with you. So
that's a good goal. And also I think HubSpot's been referenced in some way in every podcast we've done somehow. So we gotta put that as something to follow up with. HubSpot is like everywhere. I don't know why.
Interesting. Well, Pete, tell us, what are you seeing when you walk into broker owner in 2025? What are the biggest differences you're seeing of conversations of people, et cetera, than what you saw maybe in 2015?
Well, I would say the number one thing is the technology and the number of vendors that support the industry. In 2015, you might have had 30 vendors at a show. Now you have over 100, right? And the technology in 2015, the technology was it was accounting systems, Appfolio or Propertyware, right? Today, you have literally every piece of the business has some technology to it, right? Whether it's self-showings and you have like Tenant Turner, or you have for VAs, now you have VPM Solutions, so every piece of the business has technology associated with it, right? Pet screening, pet share. I go on and on, right? And so I think that is the biggest difference. Of course, today there's now a new pivot, right? And it seems like every couple of years there's a new topic that's hot. So back in 2020 to 2021, VAs were hot. 23, 24, I think automation is extremely hot. Now that we're rolling into 25, I still think automation is hot, but I think you're starting to see more conversations about AI. So, I think AI is going to, obviously it's the next big thing, right? Everybody in the world is talking about it over across every industry, and we're no different. So I think AI is now becoming the hot topic. The other hot topic is this whole idea of moving property manager to asset management in single family space. So and that's, Lior over at Blanket is really kind of pushing that. I actually, back in 2018, literally changed my property manager positions to asset managers. We literally did that in 18 because we saw the power of words, and we understood like we needed our higher skilled, higher paid, higher level people to do higher level, action items, right? Having real conversations with owners about their growth strategy, about how much equity they have in their houses, yada, yada, yada. Whereas I then had all the remote team members doing the actual property management. I don't need an $80,000 a year person, to do $10 an hour job. Like, talking to an owner about a $12, maintenance invoice, or like this grass was cut 3 times instead of twice, 3 times this month, and I only wanted it twice this month. Like, property management to me means gopher. And when you're a gopher, there's no respect there. Asset management means I am going to because you think about it, right? You don't ask your you don't talk down to your financial advisor, right? You talk up, right? You have real intelligent conversations with your financial advisor of how he can help you get to where you want to be in life, by helping you, manage your wealth. Well, if you think about it, property management companies, SFR property management companies, we are managing literally the biggest asset that people have, more so a lot of times than their financial advisor. Right. But yet they talk to us like they know what they're doing. It's like telling the financial advisor, hey, I want you to go buy Conoco stock because I said so, because I know much better than you. Right.
Yeah.
Like, I want you to go get 14 bids on drywall because I don't trust that how, it's just like you have to elevate those conversations.
Yeah. And the way you explain that is so obvious. And I don't know how anyone listening to this is going to be like, yes, like asset management, but you also want to have there are tasks that are pretty mundane, repeatable tasks that are, it's a core of property management. So it's just like having that separation too. So maybe talk a bit about that balance between, how do you position yourself as an asset manager? Meanwhile, you're building your business model to support the remote team structure because it drives more profitability. And, how do you balance the two?
Yeah.
It's sort of contradicting, right? In some ways, if you're not intentional about it.
It's not. Look, number one is if you decide to pivot and you take your property manager and you give that property manager all of the assets they need to do the work, i.e. virtual team members, that property manager has to learn a new skill. Whether that property manager can learn a skill, they're willing to learn a skill, or they have to be replaced. That's where the hard decision was. I replaced all 4 of my property managers because I had to get people out of the weeds. Right. I had to get people that can manage people. I had to get people that can manage my reporting. And more importantly, I had to get people that understood or can learn about investing. So because I was an investor, I had a secret advantage. I actually created an investor course for my asset managers to teach them about investing. And then they had to pass a test. And then I made them accredited, Empire investor asset managers. So the biggest challenge you have is typically the business owner, especially in a smaller firm, is the one who knows about investing. And the property managers are these gophers, the doers, right? And then what happens is, you're not really profitable until you bring in so many doors And then you're profitable as the business owner, but the property manager now is working nights, weekends, and they're stressed out and they're ready to churn. They're ready to quit on you. And then you reluctantly say, you know what, I'll hire another property manager. Now you're in the red. Now you're negative, cash negative. Now, meanwhile, both property managers are so busy that they can't even answer, they can't even make proactive calls to talk to you as the owner, as an investor, to find out how you're doing, how's the property doing, or better yet, I'm telling you how the property is. I'm telling you how the age of the roof is. I'm telling you what the AC is because I'm an asset manager, right? I'm not calling you every time my phone rings. As an investor for my property manager, I have to get a stomachache because I know it's either an eviction, a rent didn't come in, some kind of major issue, right? And I don't even want to answer those calls. But imagine if I had a relationship where we are talking about building my wealth as a business owner. So to do that, you have to, obviously there's training, we have to hire the right people, and then they have to manage a team and they have to be able to let go to grow. So not only you as the business owner have to let go to grow, but your property managers have to let go to grow. At Empire, lease renewals, turns, maintenance coordination, resident experience, sales calls, all done by remote team members. Okay. The asset manager, their job was to proactive calls, build relationships and then escalations. And their job was to find what I call taps, 2x4s and Mack trucks. Okay. A tap is something that's tapping you on the shoulder, like I'm going to become a problem. Okay. You can find taps if you understand reporting, if you're looking at reporting on a daily, weekly basis. An example could be maybe a property, somebody moved out and, we hadn't listed the property in a week. Right? That could be a tap, right? A 2x4 is it goes on for longer. And now the owner is calling you and ask you what's going on with his property. And you don't know what's going on. And then of course the Mack truck is the owner leaves or there's some kind of lawsuit or some kind of, real estate complaint against you. When you have these Mack trucks run you over, that creates tons of stress in the business. Now you're basically super reactive. You're dealing with a lot of emotional stuff versus like if you just would have stored on a report and took care of it at the tap, owner never knows and you take care of problems and you're kind of proactive.
Yeah. The asset manager, Dylan, it's like I'm thinking of, football. I'm going to the IU football game tonight. It's like the quarterback, they're kind of reading the defense. It's like, all right, what am I seeing? If you read the defense and you don't act on it, you're going to get sacked. It's not going to go well. And so, yeah, I think the way you explained the taps and the 2x4s and the Mac. I mean, a lot of people, they've got the lawsuit happening and they're not realizing that there are signals along the way that they could have avoided it.
Yeah. I think the irony is that people call them investment properties, but they only think of it as a property and not as an investment. So like the intentionality that you're using on semantics of titles, but also like the way people perceive themselves. Yeah, I think that seems to be a growing trend. And I agree. I've heard some more and more people talk about it, whether it be at LinkedIn or Southern States, broker owner, like that perception's changing. And it does seem like it's starting internally where people are basically drawing a line and be like, hey, no, like treat me like a wealth manager, not like a property manager. And I'm talking more to the property owners here. But what you did with the business coach and how you've grown, man, it's impressive. So tell us now, like moving from being someone who owned a property management company, but now serving the property management space. Like talk to us about the differences and similarities in that and what it's like kind of on the other side of building a business in this market.
Yeah, that's a great question. Okay. So I'll take it from the side of building a tech business now versus building a property management business, because property management business is obviously a service-based industry. And it's really important to have people with your property management business, right? Getting people is your number one asset. It's also your number one expense by far. If you don't get the right people in the service-based industry, you're always going to have challenges with churn on your on your customer side, but also on your personal side. When I started Empire, I was able to start Empire with no money down, right? I didn't have to invest any money because I wore all the hats. So I was the property manager, the assistant property manager, the lease, I did all the hats. And then Steve, my business partner, he did the hats for marketing and sales, right? With technology, because I'm not a developer, I used to code in COBOL back in 1992. I think it still exists, but not for online web, development. I had to actually invest a bunch of money, right? So I was, over 400K into this before we had a product. Okay. So huge differentiator on that. Now, I will tell you, now that the tech business, like all the stress on the tech business for me was in the very beginning, right? Building out a model, having an MVP, not knowing if it actually worked until we get a proof of concept, right? Like you're like, I don't want to say blindly, but you're like kind of like, man, I'm trusting. I'm trusting that I invest this money and this idea that I have is going to work and people are going to want to use this product, right?
Yeah. And some days you feel crazy when you wake up. Other days you feel like wildly inspired and you're going to take over the world.
I will say ignorance is bliss, man. Ignorance is bliss, like I did it when I started the single family firm. No one, everybody I knew said not going to work, too much windshield time. No one does that. It's only multifamily and ignorance is bliss. And I just fought through, like having this attitude of like I'm just gonna go do it and see it and just try it and just see what happens versus like as soon as you hit like a little roadblock, you're like, I'm gonna divert, I'm out. I'm too bullheaded, I guess, pig-headed, whatever you want to call it. Like I just kind of go through the barrier. I'm like, I'm just gonna keep doing it. Even 3 years into VPM, we weren't making any money. I was still investing money into it. I'm just like, nah, I think it's, now did I have some days, Matt? Yeah, I had some days where, then that's where you need either a good business partner or a good wife, a good partner in life. My wife, I'll get emotional here, but she's the reason why I quit my job to start Empire because she says those magic words, I believe in you. When times are really down at Empire, and I had some really down times, like we could talk about the $1 million lawsuit that came against me. We could talk about just, not being profitable, not taking cash, not taking any money for many months. She would just ask, are you happy? And I'm like, in this moment, no, but am I happier doing this than I was when I was an IT professional? Yes. She goes, fine. When VPM, we almost lost our business with VPM early on, she's like, I'm literally on the phone, like just about to bawl on my wife. And she's like, hey, I believe in you. You figured things out harder. Just figure the F out. And that was it. Right. So,
Yep.
If you don't have, I know I want to find a tangent, but it's important if you are building a business. Now, mind you, what I tell you, I told you my wife's a partner of mine and that she was there for me. She did not work in the business. Never has until recently. She's doing a little bit of stuff for us now. But, what I'm saying is like, if you want to start your business and your wife or your husband's not in the business, that's okay. But you have to have the support at home. You have to have the support at home or you have to have the support of your business partner. Like, when my business partner's cracking, I become, much more stronger. Even though I'm freaking out inside, I'm like, nope, I got this. And then when I'm cracking, he or they are stronger. So, having the right partnership, and I know I've kind of gone on complete tangent.
No, this is great.
So now a lot of people ask me, they say, Pete, you did property management for, heck, I mean, I was doing it in one of my own homes for many years, but I did third party management for about 10 years. Okay. And now I'm servicing the property management business. A lot of people ask, would you go back? And the answer is no, I would not. And it's funny because think about how many ex-property managers are now vendors that support the property management business. But how many ex-vendors do you know that have gone into the property management business and have stayed in it? And I think the answer for the second one is zero. I know Ben Smith.
I've never heard of one, I think.
Shout out to Ben Smith. Ben Smith did it. He used to work for Second Nature, started his own deal. Guess what he's doing now? He ended up selling that little business that he had, and he's now a consultant in the industry for property managers.
Talk to him later today, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, we can talk to him. Yeah, he's going to be on the pod soon. Ben's great.
I'm gonna have to ask Ben about the back and forth then.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Someone that's done that, and then it's like, well, wait a second, he went back, which sort of tells the story. But so I didn't enter the NARPM scene until really, I'm thinking back. I think 21, 22. And so it sounds like I remember like when first conference I went to, I was like, whoa, there's a lot of like remote team. Like that was new to me. Like I'd thought about it. I worked with companies that weren't in the like property management specific remote team world. And so I'd already kind of thought about that, but then I was like, whoa, this is like established here. And so was there like pessimism at the time? Were there like some like a cohort of people that are like, hey, that's not the way you should run your business, and others are like, no, it is? Or like how has that developed? And do you see any parallels to like how AI is talked about now? Like you still have some naysayers that are like, oh, it's a fad, it's
Yeah.
you got to have human people doing things. So yeah, I'm curious your perspective because you've seen it.
Yeah, on the VA stuff, it's really interesting. There are still people that will not use VAs today. Just to be clear, there are people out there that don't believe in them, just will not use them, will only hire local, which, obviously I'm completely against that because I built my whole company on remote team members. I was an earlier adopter on remote team, but remote team's been around since like 2000. Okay. There's an old book called The 4-Hour Work Week. Put Tim Ferriss on the map. If you reread that book, all it is just virtual assistants. That's all it is. If you look at that book, that's all he's talking about is virtual assistants.
Interesting.
He was super early on it, right? But early on, if you think from like early 2000s to maybe 2010, 12, it was more checklist, right? So you would basically write a checklist to a VA, here, go do this, and they would do the stuff on the checklist. One of the things that we did at Empire was we kind of took that to the next level. I didn't want checklists. I wanted people that owned a process. So you went from checklist to, hey, you can do these tasks within this process. And then we took it to the next level, said, we're hiring you. You are going to own the lease renewal process. And you're going to be part of our team. So I believe we were one of the first ones, maybe not the first one, but we were one of the first ones that took this concept of remote team. I think virtual assistant, again, words matter to me. Virtual assistant to me is the equivalent of tenant. They're not tenants, they're residents. Tenant is derogatory. Resident has some respect, right? Virtual assistant to me is the derogatory remote team member. But I use virtual assistant because that's what a lot of people know. And then once I train them on it, I then teach them about remote team. We use them as a remote team, extension of our team. They got incorporated into our culture. They took ownership of product. Now, early on, people said, no way, I don't see how this could work. I don't, the big things are, how do I trust them? What if they steal, data? How do I know they're working? Right? All valid stuff. But, the technology is there now with Zoom and Time Doctor and Hubstaff and just understanding how to manage people. A lot of people, they want to either micromanage or they want to advocate. I'm a big fan of people want to be managed. You have to manage them. And then I have a whole reason on how to like hire and all that stuff, which we won't go into. Right. But 2020 obviously changed a lot of people's minds. There are property managers that wouldn't do self-showing. Guess what? They had to do it in 2020. Right. And so now that really helped the tenant turners and the show mojos of the world to get more people to do that. Well, that helped us as well, because a lot of people said, you know what? We're working virtually anyway. The technology is there. The Zoom is there. Let's go ahead and just, let's hire remote. So there's obviously lots of benefits to hiring remote. One is when I had an office space for Empire, I worked 25 years in an office. I was one of these guys that said, you have to come into the office, right? There's no reason to come into the office other than if you're trying to like watch people. And then of course you don't manage them anyway. They come late, they hang out in the water cooler, they take long lunches, they take smoke breaks, they leave early, but hey, they run the office, right?
Yeah. Well, I think one benefit would be just like creative collaboration. But the reality is in property management, I mean, once you get your systems, there's not a whole lot of creativity that is needed. So it's like more so, remote works for, following these basic systems.
Yeah,
right?
I know a lot of tech companies are having people come back to the office, but here's the thing. When in Houston, there's something called traffic in most major metropolitan cities. And most people don't want to drive an hour in traffic to work. So that means that I had like a 15-mile radius where I have to find people that would work for the amount that I can afford to pay or that the company can afford to pay. And so you're really limiting on talent. And so you end up hiring people. And of course, look, property management, a maintenance coordinator does not make $150,000 a year. Even in freaking California, they're not going to. It's just not a job that makes that, right? It's a $10 to $15 an hour job. Well, there's not a lot of people that have, that don't have challenges inside their life, that they're not going to bring it to your office, to work at that level. So, but I can find somebody who's college educated, bilingual, doesn't see it as a job, but sees it as a career, can make more money than their parents do in their local economy by being a maintenance coordinator for $10 an hour.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing how fast something can go from like being an exception to the rule, like a luxury. Like 10, 15 years ago, if you had global talent, it was probably a luxury because you were high tech enough, you had a good enough culture, leadership, et cetera, the tools, like you could figure out how to do it, go on Upwork and find it. Now it's like an expectation, right? Like I'm more surprised when I hear someone does not have remote team members than when they do. And you wonder, kind of shifting the conversation a little bit with AI, who are the people now who say, no, that's a luxury. You're just tech minded. You're just like, you're trying to be cool. Okay. In 5 years, it's going to be, or 5 months, who knows? It's the expectation, right? So talk to us about how you're seeing AI. I mean, AI has just come up in every episode we've had so far, and it probably will for the next, X amount of years. But tell us, like, what are you seeing right now in your world? And then kind of following up on something you said earlier, you talked about being bullheaded. It seems like you've had a lot of success in your career in being bullheaded, being stubborn. I think me and Matt can both relate to that. Sometimes it's a little like, we have too high blinders, right? That's kind of part of like why we're even on this call, maniacally focused on stuff. But tell us, like, what are you bullheaded about right now? And then, sorry, long question here. What also gets you excited about the AI component and that becoming more of an expectation and not an exception?
Yeah, that's a lot to unpack there. So let's just talk about AI in general. We are seeing venture-backed AI-based companies coming into our space, right? Which is really interesting because for many years, single family management was the redheaded stepchild, and technology would come in, it would be a laggard in our industry, right? They would hit multifamily, they would hit, institutionals, they would hit totally other industries. Now, with that being said, I'm not seeing a huge adoption that I know of AI right now. Now, you have to remember that the average property manager is about 50 years old. 52 years old, I think, is the average age of a property manager. And I can tell you, I'm a forward-thinking kind of cat, but I am not embracing AI. Like I'm embracing it, but not wholeheartedly. Like I'm like reluctantly embracing it because I know it's just a matter of time, right? And so I think you're going to see a lot of people that are taking the wait and see approach. The other thing about AI is I don't think a lot of people think it's there yet, meaning like AI says it can do all of these things, but I don't think it can actually do all of those things. I think it can do a great deal of those things. And the third thing that people worry about that I've seen is like, just because I have AI, a lot of people think AI means I turn it on and it takes care of my problems. And if AI, just like a new employee, has to be trained, and you have to have some structuring organization. You have to have policies, process, procedure, like because you have to dump all this stuff into AI. And one of the things that can happen, and I've actually heard a few stories of this, is they turn on AI and then actually it exponentially makes things worse because it's given the residents or the owners answers that it really shouldn't, spitting out answers because it hasn't been learned correctly. So AI, I think if you're going to do AI, you need to hire somebody that runs the project, that manages. You need to do all the prep work prior to it. And look, these guys are trying to sell you AI. So, hey, buy it, whatever, right? And a lot of people get excited. They're early adopters. They buy the AI, they get it, they turn it on, and it's like, oh crap. And so I think AI in conjunction with a team member, right? You might be able to reduce team over time, but AI is not going to replace everybody, right? AI is not going to replace your maintenance coordinator. It might allow you to have 2 maintenance coordinators instead of 5, but it's not going to replace them. And it's going to actually create a new position in my mind. I think you need somebody who literally speaks AI. You don't need an AI developer, but you need somebody who can actually speak to the AI and actually help manage and train the AI, the AI bot. So
Yeah.
I think that's where we're going.
I think I couldn't agree more. I think it's in our industry specifically, because I think one challenge with AI, and have experienced this like personally, it's happening so fast, and it's like things are innovating so quickly. Even if you're an early adopter all over, an opportunity related to AI, and you're tech minded, you want to build something out, implement it. By the time you implement it, it might be obsolete because something else came up where it's like, oh, there's a better way to do that. And so I think with the wait and see approach, you're going to see a lot of like that is the right approach in some things. Like if it's a huge system implementation, but like for companies where it's like, all right, well, we need to use AI. I think the best way to use AI is have your remote team members, have your staff equipped with those tools. Like some of the basics, like, if you're running a lease renewal process, well, like have the data, you know, available in a system powered by AI to be able to like surface information quickly and then act on it. So like that's just someone that's you're paying your remote team member that's leveraging and trained to use these tools. That's where I think every property manager listening to this right now, like that works. But yeah, if you're just gonna like get sold some SaaS AI product, turn it on and think it's gonna like make you a millionaire and run your business efficiently while you sip a drink in Maui or something, like that's not gonna happen.
Yeah, I'll tell you a quick story about how technology really hurt my business. All right. So back in the day, I had Empire, and maintenance was the cause of it was the bane of our existence. I was losing, I think our churn rate was like 34% from clients, and 90% of that was due to maintenance, right? Getting our butts kicked. So I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna bring in Property Meld, and I'm gonna turn Property Meld on, and it's gonna solve all my problems. So I bring in Property Meld, and I love Property Meld, and but we turned it on, and it just exponentially made the process worse. Right, just made it worse. So I had to shut Property Meld off, and I had to think, okay, what is the root cause? And the root cause was our structure. Like we had kind of a maintenance call center structure at the time, and we realized for us, pod was a much better for maintenance. So we had departmental, but we figured pod was actually better for us. When we did that, and then there was a lot of training that we were missing. So 90 days later, we did a bunch of training. We put in a pod structure. And then we turned on Meld, and then it became the best part of our business. But that's like, again, you have to do your due diligence, and you have to get ready for the AI. So if you have a poor performing department and you throw AI on top of it, I promise you it's not going to fix it.
It worse.
You have to fix the root cause. It's just gonna make it worse. Exactly. You have to fix the root cause of wherever it is that you're trying to solve. And then AI is a tool to help you be, more efficient. And you're right, Matt. You still need, AI might replace a couple of people. Like, for example, in your example, you still need the VA to do the lease renewals. But that one VA might be able to do 1,000 properties versus
right.
like having to hire a second VA at 500 units or 750 units or whatever it is. Right. And so you can, with the right use of AI, you still don't, like if you need one maintenance coordinator, you're always going to need at least one, but you might be able to do more properties before you have to hire that second one with AI.
Yeah. And let's go back to your taps and, the tap and then the 2x4, the data with AI can help surface, especially if a human's overseeing the process, a remote teamer specifically, like they can surface those taps and those issues quickly, more efficiently. And then you can elevate that to the asset manager, property manager, contact to really be proactive.
I think
Easier said than done, but I think that's the right methodology.
I think the other challenge with AI is it's not cheap. Everybody thinks it's so freaking cheap. It's cheap comparatively, but it's actually cheaper to hire another VA before you actually implement the AI. So it's not as cheap as everybody thinks because it goes, per call or per minute or per property. And so you start looking at it like, man, I could just hire a second VA, until the economics works, right? And I don't know what that is for your business, but after so many doors, maybe the economics works, because now I have to hire too many remote team members or too many people, or there's too many issues going on or we can't grow or profit, blah, blah, blah. Then you can figure out if AI is right for you. But a lot of people, get AI or don't realize that it's actually more expensive, that they were too early to the game as far as how much business they're doing.
I think a company needs to train remote team members to be AI experts for property managers. it's almost like you bring in like they're higher paid than a normal RTM. They come into your team and their job is to help implement, AI tools for the rest of the team. And I think that's a way to go, like kind of top down. And I don't know if anybody's working on that. I don't know if you're working on that. But like
You say that.
I'd try that.
Funny you say that. I'm actually in conversations with Vendaroo and Hire Super to actually put training on the VPM platform for that specific purpose.
I did not know that, and I teed that up pretty well. So
Yeah,
congrats on that. That sounds great.
No, this is good. And just to tie bone the AI, coming from the one person on this, call that has never owned a PM company. I feel like a lot of times in the space, everybody's talking about how PM owners should use AI, but not asking the question of how are our owners using AI? And like, how is the market using AI? We're seeing that a lot. Matt's way more the expert than me on like just search function, right? Less people are going to Google, more people are going to ChatGPT or whatever they use. So like, that's the biggest thing, not just in the PM space, but across the nation and world. People are using, I use ChatGPT as my search engine to find a restaurant in Birmingham to take my wife to that has, options for whatever. Like, that's what I'm using it for, more so than just, I'm not just using it to like build things for my business. That makes sense? Cool. So let's land the plane here. A couple lightning round. This has been awesome. Pete, no surprise that like, because of your unique background, like we've touched on a lot of different audiences, not just people looking to grow and sell their PM company, not just vendors in the space, not just people interested in global talent. Like we've covered a lot, man. So I really appreciate it. So a few just lightning round tradition questions we always ask, because a lot of our listeners are more forward thinking. They wouldn't gotten this far in the podcast if they weren't. But what is the favorite tool or app for your business right now? It doesn't have to be a PM specific tool. What are you using right now that you think more people need to know about?
It's funny. I'm going to go with an old school one, but Slack. I am really surprised how many people do not know or never heard of Slack. So I want to put it out there because I think it's a great tool. It's basically a texting tool that you can, put, you can upload, files and pictures and stuff like that. You can create different channels. And it really has been very helpful for us, especially with the remote team members, in building culture. Like we have a channel that only good news is put in there. Like that's it. Like it's just a good news channel, right? Like when we fill a job or we post something, whatever like that. And then we have other channels that are just for developers or just for whatever. So, you're not inundating everybody, and we're trying to get people out of email. And a lot of times you don't really need to send an email. It's just like, hey, it's like a 2-second thing. So I think Slack is a really great communication tool, especially with a remote team, because I can see if they're on or not. And we have policies, like we have communication policies at VPM. If I Slack you, you need to Slack me back within 30 minutes. If I email you, you have to email me back in 2 hours. If you're on a conference call, you have to be with the video and you have to be dressed appropriately. So I'm going to use Slack. I know it's not super sexy, but Slack.
That was great. I don't know if I'm bragging or complaining, but I've used Slack every day for the last 10 years. And the audio function on Slack is awesome. It's a very sneaky function that people don't use enough.
I think there's a little video feature too. And I think our channel we use Slack with propertymanager.com. I think our channel I think it's PM Fun. We should use that one more.
Yeah, we do. Me and Matt aren't good at celebrating, so we need to
lock in on what's next. But yeah. PM Fun, we got to get that channel rolling.
All right, second lightning round. A book or podcast every PM leader should check out right now.
I'm going to give you one of each. Traction by Gino Wickman is my Bible. If you're not using EOS to build your business, you're missing out. And I don't know, let me think of a podcast. NARPM Radio Podcast.
Weird. I've never heard of that.
I think both y'all have been on it. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Check out episode 221. No, it's awesome. No, in all seriousness, man, we love the pod and what you do with the live show at Broker Owner. It's really cool. So how long have you been doing that podcast now?
I started, I think like November of 22. So I've been doing it for a few years now.
How many episodes do you think you're in now?
You know what? I actually just calculated. I think I'm over 150 episodes now. We started off doing like 2 a month. And then this year we went to 1 a week. So I do 4 a month now. So, and you guys know how hard it is to get guests and put all this stuff on. So I think we have obviously 52 weeks in a year. We take December, Thanksgiving, and New Year's like kind of off for shows. So we're doing about 48, 49 shows a year now.
That's awesome, man. That's our goal for next year.
We're noobs. Yeah, you'll have to be our podcast mentor as we continue to roll this out.
I smell a repeat guest here. Cool. All right, man. One word to describe the future of property management.
Exciting. Just exciting because you got all these tools, this technology that's coming in to make things easier. Obviously, you have the virtual assistants. I think it's really exciting a time to be a property man, to be in the property management industry. So yeah, I'll just say exciting.
We agree. Awesome, man. Well, hey, we really appreciate the time. I know you're a busy man with all you got going. Appreciate what you do for this space. Very confident we'll see you in person soon at some form of conference. Sure, you'll be in Orlando. I'm not going to be there. I got third baby coming by the time this podcast release, but I'll see you in New Orleans at Broker Owner.
You got it. See you guys soon.
Well, hey, you got to tell us, where can listeners connect with you and learn more about what you're doing at VPM Solutions and also the Narcom Pod?
Yeah. So if you go to vpmsolutions.com, that's the main site. You can check out all about us. Obviously, you can reach me at pete@vpmsolutions.com. And believe it or not, I read all my email. I don't have an executive assistant that reads my email. So it'll get to me directly. And the pod is on NARPM, NARPM.org. And I think they have like a little deal for radio, and you click on that. And it's also, you can also find it in all the wherever they have the podcast, iTunes and all that good stuff.
Awesome, man. Well, we really appreciate it. Thanks for being a friend of the pod, and we appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Have a good weekend, man.
See ya.
See ya.